I finally hit my deranged sister for all the violence she's done to me. I have never gotten along with my younger sister who has various mental health issues and a personal vendetta against me I will never fully understand. She hurt me a lot when we were kids, and not in a sister's hair-pulling kind of way. We're talking burning me with irons on purpose, trying to hold me under the pool water when my parents weren't around. She's a larger girl compared to me, cutting me with scissors, ripping heads off my dolls, and would even tell lies about me at school like how she said I got hit by a bus and died in the 5th grade. When I was a sophomore the issues between us only got worse and worse. I started trying to stand up for myself more, and while my mother would separate us when things seemed to go too far because I'll admit I'm no angel, I had my share of unkind words and jabs. However, when we stayed at my dad's it was a much different story. He would go into his room and sleep or get so angry he couldn't handle it, so he walked away, which would lead to my worst nightmare. While eating dinner I tried to pause the TV to use the restroom and my sister got mad. I told her not to unpause it until I came back, but she didn't wait for me so I got upset and called her a bitch. Again, I had my fair share of insults, but never one time had I been violent with her. I've only ever put my hands up or ran away. That day, however, she decided violence would be the only answer to my calling her that, so she took the steak knife from her dinner plate and held it to my neck. It was like time froze for me. I don't even remember to this day when she put it down or how I ended up on the floor, just the smell of the food, the way it felt against my neck, and that she said she wanted to unalive me. I do remember running to tell my dad, but he was out cold, so instead, I went to bed and put a chair behind my door because I was scared. I actually called 911, but ended up saying it was an accidental dial because I was scared of what they would do to my sister. The next day, my grandmother picked us up and took me to school. My mom homeschooled my sister after finding out she was bullying some girls at her school and stealing money from my grandmother's fundraiser. She also had kids sign a petition to rename me as Dumb He. I had a full-on panic attack in the bathroom mirror. I don't know what caused it. I may sound dramatic, but I really only remember bits and pieces of what happened that day to lead me to the counselor's office, where I spilled everything. I waited in her office for what felt like a million years when my mom came in along with a police officer and my grandma. 2 days after I slept at grandma's, we got a call that my sister is in a jail cell for the night after attacking my mother, who recently had stomach surgery, and trying to hit her in the stitches. My mom ended up going to the hospital because of the bruising, and my sister was trying to claim child abuse after my mother got her to the ground by the back of her neck. She only managed to call 911 because my grandpa lived one house away and heard all the commotion. She ended up admitting to the officer she didn't want to unalive my mother, but she really wanted to hurt my name, because she took my life. I still don't know what she meant by that. After various behavioral facilities, in/outs of public school, and multiple different medication/therapy trials, she and I started to get better during the pandemic, though there was an entire city distance from each other. She still made comments about me and would fly off the handle, but she hadn't been violent in a long time. However, in December, the first incident was when Dad dropped a Christmas present she'd gotten her dog and the paper scratched a bit. She waited until he went back to grab more from the house and, with me in the back seat of the car, took his phone, keys, and wallet before trying to speed off and nearly wrecking us into the neighbor's fence before my dad jumped in front of the car and started banging on the window. Mind you, her therapist had informed my dad to tell any family of ours to record this kind of behavior, so that's what I did. I sent it to my mom to talk to Dad about later. I try to seem involved as little as possible in her mental space. At Christmas with Mom, I won $200 in lottery tickets, and she won only $8, which led to her wishing me dead and leaving without any of the gifts I'd worked to buy her. And finally, the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when she lunged at me from across the room during presents with my elderly grandmother, and so I slammed the Christmas gift in my hand right into her face. She'd seen the video on Mom's phone while trying to send herself pictures of the day. Because of this, in the eyes of some, I may deserve it, but I was done. And when she told me she hoped I got assaulted and murdered in Orlando, she wished I never came home and claimed I'd ruined her life. I was broken. She ran off crying and I chased her into the other room, telling her that she should consider me a stranger. As far as she was concerned, I wasn't family to her anymore and she was dead to me. I'm going home today. I have had her blocked on every piece of media or contact possible. I even deleted any pictures of us. I am done with her. And these past 10 months away from her, with no contact, have made me realize just how much better my life is without the anxiety she brings in it. But now that I'm coming home, my grandmother wants me to apologize, even though my sister told her she hates to breathe the same air as me, let alone see my face. Should I apologize? Edit, I hit her with a makeup mini fridge. I refuse to submit to my boyfriend and it's ruining our relationship. Both of our families have been telling me to suck it up and be the woman he needs me to be. Right now, I'm staying with my sister while we figure things out. This all began when my boyfriend and I got into an argument over split chores in the house. I had gotten home from work and came back to a dirty home. There were water bottles and trash on the floor, along with milk still being out for however long, and dirty dishes in the sink. It was my boyfriend's day off today, but I had to work so he was home alone. I work in the ER and often have to do 12 to 16-hour shifts. He works in a warehouse and has a 40-hour work week, which I understand can be some back-breaking work, which is why I do what I do for him in the first place. Still, I manage to cook, clean, and pack food for both him and I, all while he does the bare minimum like taking out the trash or making sure he doesn't leave toothpaste on the bathroom sink. On this particular day, I had a rough day at work and was hoping to come home to a clean house, shower, and get some rest. Unfortunately, when I came back home, the house was a mess and he had guests a few hours prior, without my knowledge. I found him in the room bundled up like a sleeping peaceful baby. I was furious. I didn't even say anything to him. I simply showered and slept in our guest bedroom. I was awoken a few hours later by him yelling at me saying how lazy I was for just coming home and going to sleep. I yelled at him back saying, if you wanted the house to be clean, you should have gotten your lazy butt up and cleaned up your own mess, yourself. I am not your maid nor am I your mother, he yelled at me back saying that it was my duty as the woman of the house to keep it clean and that he wished I was like his mom because she did her job. I argued back saying that if he wanted me to be like his mom, that he should be like his dad and be a better provider, and I quit my job. He said that he was the man of the house and whatever he says, goes. I said, no, you aren't the man of the house. I am. I go to work, pay most of the bills, clean the house, cook almost every meal you eat, all while being pregnant. You can't even comprehend how exhausted I am. I am tired of your lazy butt doing nothing but come home from work, eat, and sleep. You don't help me with anything. A man is supposed to lead, but I always have to take initiative in this relationship and I'm tired of it. We're not even married and you're expecting me to step into the wifely role while you act like a kid, he said. See, this is why I haven't asked you to marry me. My heart dropped into my stomach. I told him that if he was never planning to marry me anyway, that we should go our separate ways and for him to stop wasting my time. I packed up and left, deactivated the tracking system I have in my car and phone, and has since blocked him. I am so hurt. I have invested so much of my time, money, and life into this man, and I receive nothing in return. As much as I want a baby, I don't want one that bad. I was set on leaving him until his mom called me last night and said I was stepping out of line as his woman and that I should have just cleaned up, and since it wasn't that hard for me to do. This all could have been avoided if I decided to be the bigger person and clean up after him. That it is God's word that I, as a woman, should submit to her man. I am now second-guessing my decision in terminating my pregnancy and ending my relationship over something so small like cleaning. But I know that no matter what, it won't be enough for him and that I most likely will not get the ring I deserve. I know that there is someone out there who wants to give me the world, not this little ghetto corner of California that he has to offer me, but I do love him. Growing up without either parent in my life, if I decided to keep my baby, I want my child to have both parents in their life. What should I do? Edit, he didn't know I was pregnant. I told him then and there. The reason why I didn't tell him was because I wanted to surprise him. We had a stillborn a few years back and have since been very cautious about the topic of children again. I didn't want to tell him and have him get too excited just to lose it again, so I was waiting until I was more far along, which is why terminating the pregnancy was a hard choice to make and is still a pending decision. This baby is wanted, but at the end of the day, I need to make the decision on what is best for me and my situation. I'm taking time from him. It was childish on both of our parts to lash out on each other and say hurtful things with the intent of hurting each other. I'm giving him time to really think about what he wants in life because I know what I want. I want to get married, have children, and have a stable, peaceful life. We've been together for 7 years. If I'm not what he wants, it sucks to be him. I can build my own life on my own. My boyfriend has a problem with me visiting my ex and won't admit it. My ex and I were together for 4 years, but we amicably separated 6 years ago as we grew apart, typical of young love. Since I spent 2 of those 4 years living at his parents' house, I grew close to his family and friends, some of whom I still stay in daily contact with, including my ex, mainly on Snapchat, but we don't chat much, it's mostly for sharing updates or keeping streaks. That's why I visit the town 100 kilometers away every year for the annual town festival, to see old faces, share stories, and have fun. The festival lasts from Friday evening to Sunday afternoon, and I often help with serving, setting up, and cleaning. I've been dating my current boyfriend for 4 months, locally. It's a relatively new relationship, but I've learned from past relationships the importance of open communication, which has worked well for us. I've never hidden the fact that I'm still friends with my ex, nor that nothing has happened between us since the breakup. A few days ago, we discussed our weekend plans for the next few weeks, and I mentioned my upcoming visit to my ex's home in 2 weeks. He didn't take it well, even though he had never had an issue with our friendship before. He finds it weird and odd that I'm visiting my ex while being in a new relationship, and I agree with him. I'm aware that it's not the norm. I've never given him a reason not to trust me. I've never cheated in past relationships, and having experienced being cheated on myself, I know how painful it is, and I'd never do that. He says he trusts me, or rather, he says he has to trust me because he has no other choice. He doesn't forbid me from visiting my ex, but his tone and behavior indicate that it bothers him. When I asked him how he feels about it, he simply said, "I can't change it, so it doesn't matter what I think." I understand that communication is a learning curve, and this is his first longer-term relationship, so I'm willing to be patient as we both navigate this. However, it's been 5 days since we first talked about it, and there's no improvement in sight. I'll definitely still visit my ex because my main goal is to see people I'm not in touch with on social media. But I don't know how long I can tolerate my boyfriend's lack of communication. It's just a tiny part of our relationship. Most of the time, he communicates openly. It's just in this case, he's not, and it's bothering me immensely. I offered my boyfriend to come along. My ex's parents took me in like their own child, and I'm sure they would be excited to meet my boyfriend, their foundling. However, my boyfriend declined without giving a reason. He also didn't want to meet my ex beforehand, claiming it would be weird. My main issue is that I'd like to talk about the whole situation, possibly find a compromise, and ease both his and my conscience. However, it's challenging when he doesn't want to discuss it with me. That would be fine, we don't have to talk about everything. But he denies that there's anything to discuss, yet at the same time, he makes passive-aggressive comments that suggest he's not okay with it. Thing is, I wouldn't have a problem if he visited an ex. I generally trust him until he gives me a reason not to. But apparently, that might be naive of me. I also won't be staying in my ex's house, I'll be staying with his neighbor, with whom I'm in daily contact. Go to part 2. My boyfriend has a problem with me visiting my ex and won't admit it. After the weekend, I initiated another conversation with my boyfriend. I apologized and basically explained to him it was selfish of me to not consider his feelings. I told him that my freedom over the past few years had apparently made me selfish and uncompromising, and that I definitely need to work on myself and how I communicate things. I then tried to explain to him in more detail why visiting my ex was so important to me. His family took me in when my parents kicked me out back then. They loved me as if I were their own child, just when I needed it most. They pulled me out of a depressive, in one case, even suicidal, pit countless times, and I will be forever grateful for that. I'm still in regular contact with my ex's friends and meet up with someone from the group about every 2 months. I tried to make him understand that I'm not specifically going to see my ex, but everyone who lives in that village. The annual town festival is the weekend of the year when everyone comes together there. I told him how sorry I was but that the visit had been arranged for almost 10 months, they were also counting on my help with the festival, and I would feel guilty. I had been looking forward to the festival for so long that not being able to go would break my heart a little. But despite all of this, none of these things were the end of the world, and they could somehow be straightened out. If he really wanted me to, I could cancel it. His reaction surprised me. He communicated that, thanks to the detailed explanation, he now understood and was happy for me to see those people again. He said that what had originally bothered him was how I had communicated it. He told me to go and have fun. However, he couldn't come along due to other commitments. Whenever the visit was mentioned, he genuinely seemed happy for me. So on Friday, I was supposed to leave. I came home from work at noon, packed the last of my things, and was ready to drive off. Except I couldn't find my car keys. I was sure they were on the hook that morning, but they weren't there. I searched the entire house. Nada, nothing. I then messaged my boyfriend, who was still at work, asking if he had seen them. After half an hour, he replied that he didn't know, but he could check his pockets to see if they were there. I thanked him and waited. Another half hour passed, and he messaged that they were indeed in his pocket but that I didn't need to come to get them. It would take 30 minutes each way by public transport, because he'd be home in an hour anyway. I thought, all right, I'll wait for that hour and then leave. That way, I'll see him again before I go. After an hour and a half of waiting, I called him. He was still out with a colleague having a drink. At that moment, I had already given up on leaving that day without being overly tired. I told him not to rush, that I'd wait. So, I laid down on the couch and watched some TV series. Shortly before 11 at night, my boyfriend came home slightly tipsy and acted like everything was normal. I asked him if he could give me the car key so that I could leave early in the morning. After a few minutes of hesitation, he said that he had left it at work. Up until that point, I had remained calm because mistakes can happen. But then, I got angry. I asked if he was serious. Yes, he said, he was sorry, but there was nothing he could do now. The office was closed until Monday. But we could have a nice weekend at home. At that moment, I still didn't want to believe that he had orchestrated all of this, although the thought had briefly crossed my mind. I also couldn't talk about it anymore and started crying. To calm myself down, I decided to take my luggage and stay with a friend. In response, he left the room without saying a word and returned a minute later with the car key, which he had suddenly found, and asked me to stay until the next morning. After another 15 minutes of crying, I drove to my friend's place anyway, and the next morning, I went to my ex-boyfriend's. Because I was there to help with the festival, I didn't have time to think about the situation or talk to him. But during the car ride home, I spent a long time trying to find a logical explanation for his behavior. I failed miserably. It's not even his car. He hardly ever drives my car, and when he does, he usually asks beforehand. So, I was pretty sure that all of this was planned. When I got home, he acted as if everything was okay, but he still seemed passive-aggressive. After unpacking, I confronted him during dinner about whether the whole thing was really an accident. After repeatedly asking him because things seemed illogical to me, for example why he would take my key to work at all, he suddenly got very angry. He said he never said or meant it that way. Was I too stupid to understand his words? Both he and I exchanged insults and shouted at each other. Then a plate flew in my direction, so I left and spent the rest of the day with friends. I knew the relationship was over, but he may not have realized it yet. The next day, while he was at work, 2 friends and I packed all of his things, and then we waited for him to come home. He probably thought he could talk his way out of it again, but I told him it was over. He didn't want to accept it until he saw his packed things. He became loud and aggressive again, but after a 10-minute tirade, he finally returned my house key, threw it on the ground and spat on it, with the words, "You damn SLT, you'll regret this when you die alone. But at least you can screw your ex without a guilty conscience. That was surely your plan, that's what you wanted, right?" And then he left. Since then, I've blocked him everywhere and haven't seen him, and I hope it stays that way. I used to think that stories like these, when you read them on Reddit, are often exaggerated or even made up, and now something this crazy happened. To me. I have no idea where it came from or how deep these aggressions were lurking inside him. To be honest, I'm still shocked by what came out of him. I've never been so afraid of another person and actually don't want to deal with the incident anymore.